I know you guys can't see this, but just imagine me with my head in my hands as I record this entire video, okay? Just do that for the dramatic effect, as it'll really add to the atmosphere of my content. Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, and when you saw the title of this video, I wouldn't blame you for being slightly puzzled. How is one excited for a game, but yet disappointed for feeling such a way? Well, obviously I'm talking about Star Wars Battlefront. Now, I'm a believer that criticism for video games is obviously very important, but writing a game away off the bat is plain unfair from my point of view. Battlefront 2 is a game that I really didn't even care about, even when information on it first started popping up. And considering that Star Wars is my favorite franchise when it comes to both video games and movies, that's a pretty hefty statement that I just kept scrolling down my Twitter feed, like, all right, let's see what else everyone has to say. I don't really care about Battlefront 2. Like, instead of the Battlefront 2 news surprising me, I actually surprised myself because of how little of a fuck I gave about it. As time went on, I actually did start to find myself reinterested in DICE's franchise. I have heard that DLC for the first title has immensely improved the game, considering it is now having a sufficient amount of content that the launch title should have had. Also, the concurrent number of players sits at around 100,000 plus, which is a solid increase from months ago when the game was absolutely dead. While that's great to hear, I'm yet to test it out myself because, well, like many others, I'm reluctant to hand EA any more money than I already have in the past. Due to their history, I'm sure I don't really have to, but allow me to explain why that is. Part of my issue with Battlefront 1 is that it needed to move on from the original trilogy. Now, mind you, this really isn't EA and more so Disney making the creative decision. The heroes just felt stale to me, and you could tell when they added Nia and Num as one of the downloadable character heroes that they were kind of running thin on ideas, and that the original trilogy had become really limiting for a game like Battlefront that needs heroes. Not trying to take away from our boy Nian, but you get the point that he's not really the most iconic hero like a Han Solo or a Princess Leia. Fortunately, EA has said that future sequels of Battlefront are going to feature content from the new movies, which is great to hear. I love the original trilogy as much as the next guy, but all the new characters such as Jyn, Rey, Finn, Kylo Ren, and so on are incredibly refreshing to learn about in the new movies, and I'm sure that would translate into them being fun to play as in-game. It will also just add an excitement factor that hasn't been there for me personally. I'm not sure everyone shares that opinion, but we've had so many original trilogy characters tied into our games when it comes to Star Wars that it has grown redundant for me. I'm not suggesting they remove the original trilogy because that would be heartbreaking in its own right, especially when it comes to Battlefront 2, but rather include more heroes from the new movies. We saw this with the Rogue One Scarif DLC that came to Battlefront recently, and it was fantastic. It was exciting for a lot of Battlefront fans, and it spiked the amount of people playing the game because they wanted to get their hands on those brand new characters. Also, just helped that the movie was fucking awesome, so people were dying to get back into Battlefront. Anyway, my other issue with Battlefront 1, which ties to why I'm hesitant to hand EA more of my money, is that the game felt like a framework, as in this was the base for future projects, and it didn't really matter how Battlefront 1 did because the future titles were going to build off of that and be bigger and better. It's graphically beautiful, the sound is unrivaled in gaming as far as I'm concerned. It's clear that this is where most of the attention for the game went, considering it had a deadline to meet with The Force Awakens coming out at the time. Now that the framework is established though, I actually feel it's reasonable to assume that most of DICE's focus will be on the actual game and providing substantial content. But what's weird though is that I feel awkward saying that because that should be an expectation with any game, is that they should be focusing on the content they're providing, not how the damn thing looks. Obviously we like our pretty games, and Star Wars Battlefront really brings the conflict to life with its attention to detail. I'm saying that now that it's there, maybe we can actually hope that we'll see some substantial content inside. On the other hand, I do have a little more hope because as the life of Battlefront progressed, you could see DICE listening to the feedback such as the customization for your soldier, or for example, you had the single player missions now, playing against bots, that stuff that people loved from the nostalgic Battlefront games that are now in the modern one. These are things that the vanilla games sorely lacked that updates have fixed. Also, with the first entry of the series, it did not have a single player campaign, and it's very nice to hear that this is something we can expect. Once again though, I go back to what I said about there actually being a focus on content. These are things that I feel should be almost expected, not in the terms of entitlement as a gamer, but just that in a video game, I think it's safe to say we could expect a story, I'll focus on the amount of content in the game to get my money's worth. You get what I'm saying? We're expecting the most minimum amount of stuff that should be in a base game regardless. If DICE were to include a great campaign like a Battlefield 1 along with the amount of content from Battlefront 1 and all its DLC, then I think it's safe to expect that this is something that'll satisfy fans of the series. So let's tie it all together. Why am I disappointed in myself for feeling optimistic? Well, I've been here before. When the Battlefront beta came out in 2015, I played the hell out of it, and I love DICE's take on the series. Yeah, get that, I talked all this crap, but I love the direction they're taking in the terms of action, gameplay, but I felt it took away too much of what made Battlefront in the final product. This video was 30 plus minutes talking about how this game could easily knock the nostalgia-fueled Battlefronts out of the park if there was enough content in the game, which brings me back to square one. It just has to go down to making quality content in the game, and I simply don't trust the combination of EA and DICE, although Battlefield 1 does ease my concerns a lot more because that game was great. I know it's cliche for me to say all this, like, screw EA, I don't trust them, but it's true, and usually I'm not that skeptical of a gamer. Battlefront is one of my favorite franchises of all time, and as a fan, I say that they gutted the Star Wars license for cash with the vanilla version of the first game. I'm also getting the feeling that I've mentioned the vanilla game a million times that I'm starting to annoy myself, so people who are playing Battlefront now probably want me to shut up about the vanilla game because it's so different now, and I understand that entirely, but I don't feel it's easy to justify the hype for a vanilla Battlefront 2 when it technically takes $110 to get the full product for Battlefront 1. Now, there are tons of sales, so you can snag everything for about $40 at this point in time, but that's obviously over a year later. Hopefully, though, you understand the point I'm making when it comes to a vanilla Battlefront 2. When you compare the vanilla for each game, I'm sure they're going to be leagues apart, which will obviously help the marketing for DICE and in return get more sales, so you could argue that this is some type of conspiracy theory for a marketing tactic from EA. I'm willing to give the title a chance though, as I do with all games, but this is one of the few titles that's going to be viewed under an entirely skeptical eye of mine until I see and hear more about it, which should be applied to every game, but for me, I'm not one of those people who says, I'm going to set my expectations so dramatically low that I'm going to hate this game going into it, so that when it surprises me that I actually psych myself into falling in love with it. I just don't believe that tactic. I let the game do its natural thing to me, and if I like it, I like it. If I don't like it, that's all there is to it. I just take the natural process to it. So here's the hopefully Battlefront 2 being a fantastic game. I love Star Wars, and I do think that DICE's vision really does have some potential, and I do think the DLC for Battlefront 1 seems to show that. I'm just hoping they can apply all of that content to the second one and make it some quality stuff. Time will tell if that vision will live up to the pedestal I put Star Wars on. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this in the comments down below. Be sure to sound off with what you're thinking about Battlefront 2, some of your thoughts on Battlefront 1. If you're a current player on Battlefront 1, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Does it still feel like it's missing something, or has DICE answered all your wishes? I know they've added also space battles in DLC, but once again, it boils down to that DLC for me. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook. The links are, as always, in the description down below. Check out SugarBomb.com, the place by Bethesda fans for Bethesda fans. Other than that, stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.